You vote for politicians, but you don't vote for the people who control your money. Every government claims it serves the people. Every politician promises stability, prosperity, growth. But behind the speeches, behind the campaigns, there is another power. Quiet, technical, unelected. The central bank. They don't march in parades. They don't run for office. Most people can't even name the people in charge. Yet they decide how much money exists, who gets rescued, which banks live, which banks die. They can make your mortgage cheaper, your savings worthless, your retirement disappear. And they can do it without a single vote from you. This is the real history of central banks, how a handful of institutions became the true power brokers of the modern world. To understand how this happened, we have to go back to the 17th century. Europe was broke. Wars drained treasuries. Kings spent faster than they could tax. Governments were desperate for money. In England, King William III needed cash to fight France, but lenders didn't trust the crown. Defaults were common, so a new institution was created, the Bank of England. It had one revolutionary privilege. It could issue paper notes backed by government debt. For the first time, money wasn't just gold and silver, it was paper backed by promises. The Bank of England became the king's creditor and the nation's banker. The lesson was simple: control credit, and you control the state. Other countries copied the model. Central banks spread across Europe, tied directly to governments that needed money for wars, empires, and industry. By the Napoleonic Wars, one truth was obvious. Wars aren't just won on battlefields, they're won in balance sheets. Britain didn't defeat France with better soldiers, it defeated France with better credit. The pound sterling became the backbone of global finance, backed not just by strength alone, but by a central bank. Then came the 20th century. America's financial system was chaotic. Banks issued their own money. Panics were common. In 1907, the system collapsed. Banks failed. Markets froze. The country panicked. And the man who saved the system wasn't the president. It wasn't Congress. It was J.P. Morgan. From his private mansion, Morgan forced bankers to inject liquidity and stop the collapse. One private man had done what the government couldn't. That terrified Washington. So, in 1913, after secret meetings at Jekyll Island, the Federal Reserve was born. Independent from voters, connected to Wall Street, authorized by Congress. It could print money, set interest rates, and act as lender of last resort. A financial engine unlike anything before it. World War I was its first test. No nation could afford industrial war with taxes alone. So central banks printed money, issued bonds, suspended gold convertibility. The gold standard broke under pressure. When governments face survival, central banks always step in. After the war, the bill arrived. Inflation tore through Europe. Germany printed until money became worthless. Weimar hyperinflation wasn't an accident, it was policy under pressure. Then came the Great Depression. Markets crashed. Banks failed. Credit vanished. The Federal Reserve hesitated, tightened when it should have loosened. Millions lost jobs. Entire economies collapsed. One lesson became undeniable. Central banks don't just stabilize economies, they can destroy them. After World War II, governments tried again. In 1944, Bretton Woods was created. The dollar, backed by gold, sat at the center of the system. Other currencies orbited around it. On paper, it was cooperation. In reality, it was power. The Federal Reserve and U.S. Treasury became the core of global finance. Money became geopolitics. Then, in 1971, the illusion cracked. Vietnam War spending drained U.S. gold reserves. Foreign nations demanded gold for dollars. Nixon had two choices: lose the gold or break the system. He broke it. The dollar was no longer convertible to gold. From that moment on, money was pure fiat, backed by nothing but trust. And trust is fragile. Since then, central banks have operated without restraint. In the 1980s, Paul Volcker raised rates to nearly 20%. Inflation collapsed. So did the economy. The Fed proved it could crush inflation by crushing everything else. In 2008, the system imploded again. This time, central banks didn't hesitate. They printed trillions, bailed out banks, saved markets. They called it quantitative easing. For Wall Street, it was salvation. For savers, it was silent theft. Then came 2020. Printing went into overdrive. Stimulus, bailouts, corporate rescues. Money created with keystrokes. Central bank balance sheets exploded. The justification was always the same: stability. The cost was inflation, asset bubbles, and a simple truth: money is whatever central bankers say it is. This is what most people never realize. Central banks are not neutral referees. They are unelected power brokers. They decide who feels recessions and who gets rescued. They inflate debts away or trigger deflationary pain. Their decisions affect your life more than any election, and they operate behind complexity: interest rates, liquidity facilities, bond purchases. Jargon that hides power. Every intervention makes the system more dependent. Every bailout guarantees the next one. Governments run deficits, assuming rescue. Banks take risks, assuming protection. Investors chase bubbles, assuming the Fed put. History tells us how this ends. Every financial system breaks eventually. The Bank of England faced crises. The Reichsbank collapsed. Bretton Woods failed. No system is permanent. So what does this mean for you? It means politicians don't control money. Central banks do. When they inflate, your wages lag. When they tighten, your mortgage explodes. When they rescue markets, asset owners win. Savers lose. Trust holds everything together, and trust cannot be printed. That's why real resilience has always been the same: gold, land, skills, productive businesses. Things central banks cannot create at will. The history of central banks isn't hidden. It's written in every crisis. They were born to fund governments. They grew through wars. They expanded through bailouts. They are not elected. They are barely accountable. Yet they control the money you cannot live without. That is the paradox of modern power. The people you never vote for control the currency you depend on. If this changed how you see the system, subscribe. The answers aren't in the future. They're written in the past.